I don't be. As far
you
as
got to re-say the question.
he said, is there a bias because niggas feel like we support everything, even if it's trash on the West Coast, as far as on the East Coast?
I'm gonna say 100%, but so there's nuance to it though, and I don't want to get into a science class or a social studies class, but there's a reason why things are set up the way they are, and that's a great question, by the way. But for the people who listen to this show, when it comes to West Coast from a music standpoint, it's not just music, it's culture. We are in Mexico. It is what it is. This land was stolen from Mexicans. That's a fact. Go back and do your Googles, right? So
The Treaty of
when you
Guadalupe.
when you start to look at, oh, West Coast music we support everybody else. Los Angeles, this is not, I'm not making these numbers up because I'm in broadcasting. Los Angeles specifically, I'm gonna go L.A. County, San Fernando, Orange County, and Riverside County. 80% Mexican, 80% Latino. Those are real numbers. 7% black. So when you're making music, you're not making music for the homies in your neighborhood. You're not making music for people who even look like you. You're making music for what's urban to us. Urban to us is not black because we make up 7% of the entire black population that consumes music and media in this market, right? 7%. That's infants to senior citizens and everybody in between. But then geographically, for people who want to visualize this or go look at your Google Maps, and y'all can picture this in your mind because you're from here. If you go Dockweiler Beach and you go east to the 710 freeway, you picture that? Then you go to the 10 freeway, and then you go south to the South Bay, to Torrance. That's where all the black people is, and right in that little box. Tell me I'm lying.
No.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, LA is way bigger than that box like LA County and everything I just named is way bigger than that box. So when you think about just driving down Wilmington, you'll go through 200 hoods. In real life, like,
Oh no, definitely.
you get what I'm saying? Going down Central, like, it's just, so these things I'm trying to explain to people about the stigma of West Coast music or LA music, specifically California. Our demographic is so skewed and specific that it's more white people and Asians and Mexicans than us. So when you make a song, it not only has to be relatable to black people, but it has to be relatable to Latinos, it has to be relatable to Asians and white people. And then you have the difficulty of going across the country to the other side, so you're not just a regional act. And then your music has to be translatable to black people in the South who don't have the same experience as we do. There are they just added one. There are 3, there's some more game for y'all. There are 3 urban radio stations on this side of the Mississippi River. 3. Urban meaning, I mean, if you look into how the way music is formatted, there's rhythmic, which Steele just brought up, and there's urban, and there's top 40, that's CHR formats, right? So from a demographic standpoint, the reason why television and radio are great barometers is because they do real metrics based on the census and stuff like that. So when black people get them forms in the mail and you don't fill them out, or you don't vote, or the census, they come every year or every couple of years to your house and you don't fill that out, that means that now you don't count when they doing them numbers, when they passing out them programs, when they doing them zip codes, when schools get their funding based on the zip codes and stuff like that. So from a media standpoint, when it comes to music, you make your song, there are 3 stations on this side of the Mississippi River that cater to black people. 3 radio stations total. Okay, so if you go Texas and you go straight up the middle and you divide the United States in half, just look at it like basketball conferences. You got the Western Conference and you got the Eastern Conference, right? It's crazy that Cleveland is in the Western Conference because that's the Midwest.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you look at it from a basketball standpoint, I'll give you another piece. The Mississippi River divides the United States in half when it comes to broadcasting. Everything east of the Mississippi River are W stations, WKRZ, WP, like they're all W. Every UPN. Everything west of the Mississippi River are K stations, KTLA, KPR, KTTL.
Man, you just taught me something. I didn't know that.
I went to school for this shit, for radio. So look, and then if you go in San Diego and you see stations like Z90, the reason why it's a Z is because their actual broadcast antenna is not in the United States, it's in Mexico. That's why when you go north to like you ride that Canada border, or you go south and you ride that Mexico border, if a station begins with Z, that means that they antenna that they broadcast on is actually over the border, and it just come over here because it's cheaper and whatever the case may be. Long story short, every K station, with the exception of 3 radio stations, are rhythmic stations. Rhythm. They cater to up-tempo, party, Latino, girls. That's it. So when you so then the urban stations,
And they play all fast music.
it's not fast. It's tempo music. So when you talking about urban music, NBA YoungBoy. You ever heard an NBA YoungBoy song on the radio in LA?
No.
No, you won't hear that. You don't really see Jeezy, YoungBoy. You don't see Boosie, Webby. You don't see none of them dudes out here doing shows like that. They make urban music. They make music for black people. There's not enough black people to sustain the ecosystem. If you did a show, even whether it was in 90s or today, and it was all black people, it wouldn't sell out. Right or wrong?
True.
Okay. That being said, we don't have an ecosystem to sustain from a music standpoint. So when you start to go in across the country and you translate your music to the other side, there are 6 urban radio stations just in Atlanta. There are 6 radio stations that cater just to hip hop just in Atlanta. There's 1 urban radio station in California. So think about that, right? So there's 1 urban, and that's because of Doc Winter, and shout out to him. He always wanted to empower, the black person or the black people who have a stake in the culture. So we control the culture. We don't dictate the metrics of it. We set the cool,
It's
but we
real.
don't control the money. We don't control the numbers. YG sold out the Forum. I was there. If it was only black people, it wouldn't have sold out.
Definitely.
You get what I'm saying? But they have a chitlin circuit in the South. Webby, Boosie, Jeezy, Ross, they all do the chitlin circuit out there. They go 30,000 a night. They go from club to club. It'd be 2,500
You
black
know what's
people in there.
funny?
So then, hold on, look. So then, when you start looking at the music, to answer your, it's a long explanation. That's why I said it's deeper. But the long explanation is when you look at the music has to line up so perfectly, culturally, sonically, the tempo, the samples, the everything has to line up so perfectly at one time in order for it to translate. That's why we get that bias. That's why it's like if any song that's 95 to 105 BPM, everybody assumes, oh, that's West Coast. That's a West Coast sound. I heard Offset say that when he went on the radio and he was like, oh, Ric Flair drip. That's a West Coast sound to beat. Every song that 100 BPM is not a West Coast song. I'm a DJ by trade. I've been DJing since forever, right? So if you got Blow the Whistle, Too Short, that's 100 BPM. Rihanna with Drake, What's My Name? Oh, nah, that's 100 BPM. You got Drake, Passion Fruit, the disco song that he did. That's 100 BPM. You got Lil Jon, Get Out of Your Mind. The techno, get out of here. That's 100 BPM. I just gave you 4 songs that's 100 BPM. So I hate that bias when people say, "Oh, that's a West Coast song because it got tempo and it's moving." No, that's not true. It's just that you people don't understand, and they shrunk the dance floor and got rid of the dance floor and created sections to sell more bottles. It's like a whole cultural overhaul that we went through from a music standpoint that made things what they are now. That's kind of like
People don't dance in the club no more, man.
And
People just
honestly,
wanna
I
do bottles.
think that, honestly, I think we're the one motherfucking coast that don't really support their artists as much as they should.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
I think down south and East Coast supports their artists. Like they just don't support us here.
who is they though?
I'm talking about people, period.
Well, you just
Just
heard
consumers.
them. You
Yes.
heard them say that these are. Look at our look at our.
Also,
base.
too, and I'm not caping for any infrastructure or any people, but LA is also the #2 market in the country. So this is another stigma, right? So the top 5 media markets in the country. #1 is New York. This is per capita based on population and people who consume media and music and stuff like that. #1 is New York. #2 is LA. #3 is Chicago. #4 is Dallas, and #5 is the Bay. Those are the top 5 media markets in the country, right? So that's why if you get a song going in the Bay and LA and it becomes huge, you got the biggest movement going because 2 of the top 5 markets are in California, right? Now, the other part about that is when it comes to support, in theory, you're right. But this being the #2 market in the country, the majority of people who consume media here aren't from here. This is the #1 transplant city in the United States. This is the #1 transplant city in the United States of America. So not to take away from New York, because New York is the #1 market based on population, but out here, this is where everybody comes. Actors, actresses, publicists, music artists, entertainers, dancers, songwriters, showrunners, people who write TV, people who write. This is the #1 transplant place to come. So it's not that we don't support our people. It's not really enough of us in position in the infrastructure to move the needle.
Gangster Chronicles, we gon' tell you how it goes. If I lie, my nose will grow like Pinocchio. We gon' tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. Gangster Chronicles, this is not your average show.